live stream and all that other good stuff. Let me just get this back up. Go. Got my security camera pointed at the front door. And now I'm hearing my echo of myself. Don't like that. All right. Well, I can minimize that screen. Leave that one. Seems to be good. Yes. Just double checking for that. All right. And now I can hide this. Hide floating meeting controls. Okay. Click on that, click back, and with 2 minutes to spare. All right, let's see if I can get the laptop turned around a little bit for everyone to be able to see who is here. And you know what I need to do? I need to turn off my fancy dancy background. Oops, and just have to deal with it. There we go, because we got this lovely library, which is much nicer than my little corner of the room at home. So I don't need to use a fancy background. Let's get that pointed over there a little. I'm going to be moving around, so I apologize to anybody who's on Zoom because you may not always get to see me. That's one of the perks of being in the room, right? You get to see me no matter where I'm standing. Or maybe that's one of the drawbacks of being in the room. But really, I'm right here. All right. And then, I'm going to keep back to the security camera. Keep an eye on if anyone at the door. Did everyone here in person grab one of the packets? The two, one of each of the handouts. So for those of you that are playing on at home, we will have them on screen. You've already got your own copy there that you printed out before you got here, but just pay attention when I say verse this, verse that. For those of you that are playing along at home or who are watching on YouTube later, we are going to be looking after we finish our review with Safaria. You can always look at Exodus chapter 10, and we'll be starting from verse 1. So that's what we've got as a printout. For those of you that are here in person, you'll also notice I have different tikkunim. Tikkun is a book that is dedicated for helping people prepare for Torah reading. I have an older version of the tikkun over there on the right, which is I think photocopied for the last 50 years. And then on the one on the left, I have a newer version with much clearer type and much more structured layout. Really, I can highly recommend getting modern tikkun if you're going to be reading a lot. If you want a digital tikkun, let me know and I can send you a file. But I personally like studying with something in my hand. I'm not a big fan of studying with the digital form. I like reading and I love the convenience, but it's not the easiest way for me to actually get into the mode of stuff. Okay, well, swing the door shut so we're not trying to air condition the hallway. Let's go ahead and get down to work. So thank you for joining me in person. For those of you that were able, thank you for joining me online. For those of you that were able, thank you for joining me with YouTube. For those of you that are on YouTube sometime, either now or in the future. Let's go ahead and begin with our mantra. Why are we doing this? Why are we breaking our teeth trying to learn trope? Well, because trope adds beauty to the Torah. Trope ensures a consistent flow of the reading. And most importantly, it ensures the correct meaning of the reading. Yes, I can go on and on about how trope makes your life easier as a Torah reader, but really that's after you've already realized that it's important to read the Torah and important to do it correctly in the first place. So these are what we need to remember when we are ever getting frustrated, ever getting discouraged, ever thinking like we should give up, remembering that trope is there for very important reasons, and we really need to have Torah readers that are committed to ensuring not only that the words get said, but that the flow of the words allows us to hear the meaning at in a much clearer way. So that is our main reasons for here, but then we have to remind ourselves of the big rules. And these are really, really important to keep in mind. Anytime you are getting stumped, anytime you think you can't figure out a word, sit down, check the rules, see if there's something that will help you untangle the confusion. One, every word has a trope symbol, all of them. We talked about that mild exception where there's a little hyphen between two words, which is not an English hyphen, it is a musical hyphen, connecting two words to only one trope under the last word. But because of that hyphen, rule number one still is true. Every word has a trope. Every symbol is either a joiner or a stopper, meaning it either joins the words together. It's leading me on to the next word. I don't take a big gap in breath. I don't say Sure, when I'm practicing, no problem. But ideally, when I get to the bima, when I'm doing it for real, I want to make sure that I'm flowing where I should flow and that I pause where I should pause. There's no award for going super fast and just doing all the words without any breaths between them. The breaths are as important as the lips. 3, the symbol will always appear with the accented syllable. Sometimes under, sometimes over, as we've seen, but need to know where the accent goes, look for the trope symbol. It'll be on the syllable that gets accented. It's beautiful that way. All the information is already coded on the page. For the other syllables, the ones that don't have the trope symbol on them, will be chanted on a neutral note. Don't try and get fancy on all the other syllables. If the other syllables are there, dot, 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 like you're just hitting the same key on the piano over and over again. Sometimes you'll start low, depending upon where it comes in the flow. Sometimes you'll start high. Often you'll just start in the middle. But it's basically just going to be a ding, 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 ding on the piano until you get to the ha, 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 until you get to the fancy bit. And that's where it all comes alive, because that's what we're trying to accent and show the nature of the word. And 5, most Hebrew words, to make our life easy, are accented on the last syllable. Occasionally they're not, and when they're not, the trope will move forward, and it will be not on the last syllable, but most of the time it will. If it happens to not be on the last syllable, our rule number 6, make sure you save a note to go for those final syllables. So if it happens in the middle of a word and there's another syllable after it, it would be like ti, ha, ah, and that second ah is going to be for the final syllable because it needs a note for itself. And you just borrow a note from the main trope. We'll look at some examples as we go through today. Everyone with me on the big rules? All right, it's nice being able to actually see people's faces. I like that. Okay. And then we have just a few other rules. Keep in mind to avoid confusion. Our trope usually comes in family blocks. All of our little minivan pictures are all designed to help us get that idea. The symbols will always appear in a consistent pattern. It's a great thing once your mind clicks into that mode to avoid the burden of memorizing everything as though they were floating little ideas. They now come as a group, and it's much easier for our brain to hold on to a group than it is to hold on to 1,000 different pieces. If you learn the pattern, you can predict what comes next. And that gives you a sense of confidence. It gives you a sense of certainty. It's a great way to diminish your anxiety. Because I just went, I have, even without looking at the page, only 2 options of what comes next. It's either going to be Muna, or I'll jump straight to Nafta. That's it. 99.9% of the time. There's always a little asterisk. Yes, sometimes the Torah will throw you a left turn, but you'll notice them. And when you already know the pattern, it'll be really easy to also learn the change-ups when they happen at 0.01% of the time, because you'll be recognizing them as being deviation. Oh, there's somebody here. Hold on. Because they're not showing up on the camera. If you don't mind, that would be great. Thank you. Oh, and I misspelled door because of auto correct. So they said they were at the front. That's what confused me, because the front here, because of our building being a circle, there's like 4 different fronts to this building. The front can be up in the sanctuary front, the front can be over on the school front, the front can be in the office front, the front can be in the social hall front whenever we do like our barbecue type activity. So hopefully that little description of our architecture will install just the right amount to let them in, because I don't want to punish anyone for helping. Hello.
Sorry, we were trapped in the corridor. I could get us through the.
Oh, that's why you weren't showing up on my camera. On the camera, you must have
Not my
slipped
best
in.
plan, but you know, it's.
Because I was watching the security camera, and you must have slipped in. And then he said, "We're at the front." I'm like, "No, you're not."
Right, yeah, I couldn't really think that. I just thought somebody was here staying on the second door, but I guess.
Unfortunately, the soundproofing is pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, that explains a lot.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Once you learn the pattern, you can learn that prediction, and that makes your life a lot better. This is, by the way, one of the things that I found personally greatly reduced my own anxiety when I was chanting from the Torah. As I explained last class or the class before, when I first began chanting as an adult, I was exceedingly nervous when I was chanting. I am not, I wasn't, and still not exactly, a great fan of public speaking. I know, yeah. God has all sorts of plans for each of us. It doesn't always take into consideration what we feel most comfortable doing. And when it came to chanting from the Torah, I was even more nervous than just giving a sermon. And I remember very, very clearly for the first, I don't know, dozen times while holding the yad, chanting from the Torah, my hand was shaking so violently that I thought I was going to poke a hole through the Torah because I was nervous. Learning the family blocks, learning the prediction patterns, knowing that I didn't have to panic of what's next, but I could have a reasonable reassurance that I knew what was next because I knew the pattern. That helped immensely to take off that stress of not knowing what's on the next room, next door. So I could guess what was going to be the next door. Once I began a family, I could feel that I was in that zone, and I was confident that I knew where I was going. And of course, once you know where you're going, it's much less stressful. You're less likely to forget. Everything reinforces making this much easier, and then your pulse rate goes down, your breathing becomes regular. Now you're not tight in the throat, you're singing more comfortably, you're not getting spots before your eyes. Everything begins to change once you diminish that stress. And as I mentioned, the melody motif of a given trope doesn't change. Your mileage may vary when it comes to it or not. Then it does change, but it does in a predictable pattern way. We'll review again tonight. So really, all of these rules are there for you to just realize, remember, and it will make your life easier. Okay, so let's second. Everyone can more or less see that one. I don't need to move our Zoom buddies off the screen completely, I think. All right, so let's do our review. For those of you that are here in person, the moment you've all been waiting for, another human being, maybe related to you or living in your house, will hear your voice. Okay? Now, I'm not going to throw you all under the bus, right? I hated when my Spanish teachers would just point on people at random back in high school and make people do things. So we're not going to do that. We're going to be doing this a little bit together. If you have a question or if you're not sure you're doing it right and you would like me to hear you individually, absolutely we can do that. And when we get later on tonight, I will ask for some volunteers, but I will never pick on anyone that isn't actually volunteering. I consider that to be quite mean. When someone is already putting themselves on the line, learning something that is hard. So let's go ahead and we're going to do our review. And our review means I'm going to sing first, and then you're going to follow. And by follow, I mean sing now. mentioned this before. I'm going to mention it again until everybody in the whole world hears it. You don't sing best by singing quietly. If you are unsure if you're singing, the worst thing you can do for yourself is try to whisper your way through. Because it is harder to sing in a whisper than it is to sing with just the normal level of speaking volume. Remember seeing people on Broadway or in musicals and they're singing songs in this passionate whisper. That's really, really hard. When they sing just like, ah, that's easy compared to being able to sing while also making it sound like a whisper. You guys don't need to sing the hard way. Sing the normal way. So that means I should be able to hear each voice. Don't worry, I'm a professional. I can hear each of you, but don't worry, the other people around you can't because they're all worried about themselves. Okay, so you don't have to be embarrassed in front of me, and they're not paying attention to you at all because they're all worried about their own stuff. Now, if you have your own trope style, if you've begun studying long before you started working with me and you've learned a different melody set, that's perfectly fine. Go ahead and use the set that you are familiar with. I may throw you off a little bit because I'll be going first, and I apologize for that. And if you hear someone next to you singing in a slightly different style or key or pitch or anything like that, don't worry about that. Just worry about finding your own groove and work with that. All right, not enough caveats for everyone. Okay. All together now. Excellent. We can start a choir. Really, really good. And for those of you that are on Zoom or on YouTube, please make sure that you are singing at a nice volume. Unfortunately, I can't hear you, but I will ask you to unmute later on when we're doing some of our verse by verse work so that I can touch base with you then. All right, line number 2, mostly the same. All together. And final line of our big 3 families. Together. Remember, with these 3 guys, you can cover 80 to 90% of anything in the Torah, depending upon which passage you happen to be reading from. These are your workhorses. And I do highly recommend, especially while you're still getting used to all of this chanting sort of thing, anytime you sit down to review, take a minute or 2 and review the trope by name before you jump into the actual reading. This will reseat them in your mind. It'll get you right back into whatever your melody is, your pitch and octaves and all of the things that work for you individually. And of course, it will be reminding you of families and of all the melodies. And that will sort of prime the pump, just like, for anything that you do educationally. You want to reactivate the memory, take it from long-term storage, put it out, and then you'll be much more comfortable going to use it. All right, so those are our 3 main families, but of course, we've got some other ones we need to work with as well. Dargan Tevir. Together. Dargan Tevir. Adma ve'azlan Muna Revi. Adma ve'azlan Muna Revi. And then the 4 at the bottom are each separate. They can plug in, as you saw from our work, as well as the PDFs that went along with this course. They can plug into the Rivi phrase. The T can plug into some of the Katon phrases, but we're going to do each of these individually. So we're not going to sing all 4. We're going to sing 1 and then repeat, sing 2nd, repeat, and so on. Gershai. Together. Gershai. Munach legarmeh. Munach legarmeh. Elisha gedola. Elisha gedola. And my favorite, Yativ. Yativ. Everybody gets that. It's like, I don't. There's something about Yativ that it's just like a welcome relief. With all of these other notes lying around, it's just ba-bum. All right, and then we get into our last main family, the Zarkaz, Sigol, blend, and then we have our three other individuals that can plug in all sorts of places. Munah, Zarkaz, Munah, Sigol, Munah, Zarkaz, Munah, Sigol. Excellent. And Pazer. Elisha Ketana. Elisha Ketana. And Zakef Gadol. Zakef Gadol. Right, you guys are doing amazingly well. It is nice to hear the voices coming around and nice and strong. And yes, I can hear that third page is a little bit weaker than first page. That's normal, right? That's because you've been working on the first page for 2 weeks longer than third page. And like I said, the first page is the most important. But the fact that you were able to get through any of these at all and to do so with the level of volume is really, really excellent. All right. Before we move on to our actual work for this evening, any questions on any of these 3 pages or anything in general about Torah? Before I start making you do more work. Now's your chance. Okay. Oh, and I'm going to have to move that a little bit or else the people in the room won't be able to see it. Now you do, oh, no, don't shrink, don't enlarge that. There we go. All right. So everyone should either be seeing on the screen, which I apologize for having blown it up. It's a little blurry. It's not your glasses. It's just a little blurry. But if you look at the handouts that you received, got my own copy as well. It's right here as well. And if you are looking either in a Chumash at home or an online version such as Sefaria, you'll be looking at Exodus chapter 10. Now, if you look at the big print version, that's going to be what we're starting with this evening. You're welcome to look at the small print if you like, but I'll get there later when I switch glasses. You need to begin to figure out how to find your way around the page, how to navigate. And the way this is going to happen is, well, in any version of a printed text of Torah, you're going to find that it has chapters and verses. As I talked before in many of my other classes, we didn't invent chapters and verses. That was actually an invention of Christianity in the Middle Ages, deliberately so they could argue with us about theology. Thanks, guys. But we discovered that it was actually a useful convenience, even though we disagree about some of the breaks that they put into chapters in particular. So we have to navigate. Now, if you are handed a beautiful printout like this, it's not too hard to find. You just look down for the big number in parentheses. Here you can see it up on the screen in blue. That's your chapter. And then for each verse, you can see verse 1, and then you just scroll down with your eyes until you get a 2, and you keep going till you hit a 3. No problem at all. If you are playing with the home version, meaning a book that wasn't put together just for you right now for this class, well, it's a little bit tricky, but the rules stay the same. And if you know how to use a dictionary or an encyclopedia, I know some of the people today never actually had a physical one of those, but if you've ever used one, you'll be fine. Open it up, remember that it's a Hebrew book, and all you have to do is look first of all for the book of the Torah. This is Exodus, so you would open up your Chumash to Exodus. You would then turn until you can find turn back a few pages to pretend like I'm slightly lost. So you can see at the top of the page, it's going to give you the numbers of what chapter and what verse that particular page has. So you just keep turning until you get to chapter 10. Now, for those of you in person, because unfortunately the camera won't pick up the small text that I'm trying to show you, you may have noticed something magical just happened. I was on chapter 9 of Exodus, and then suddenly I was in chapter 28 of Ezekiel. Well, that's because this is a Chumash that is used in the sanctuary for Shabbat readings, and after each Torah portion, it includes the Haftarah for that Torah portion, which is taken from the prophets. And that means that we're suddenly going to be in a different book and whole different chapters related to that other book. You just have to keep turning pages until you get to Exodus again and chapter 10. And then you'll look down to find whatever verses you're looking for. That exact same principle will work in that modern version of a tikkun there. That's the big book that's right in front of you. But if you look in the older version, which thank you are becoming more and more rare, it's that one that's open next there. You are, Fabian. Thank you. So, what's that? That's probably the one that you have at home. This used to be. Let me hold this up for the camera as well. See if I can get that in frame. This used to be the standard tikkun that everybody had. And it was nice because it was cheap. And it was cheap because it's basically photocopied from older versions that are in the public domain. So all you have to do is print it up, put a binding on it, and you can sell it to people. Great. More Torah in the hands of more people is something I can always get behind. There are a couple of challenges, however, if this is the tikkun you have. One is if you look very carefully, there's no English on that page, and there are no Arabic numbers either. All of the numbers on this page are Hebrew numbers, which means that if you want to find chapter 10, you're not looking for a 1 and a 0, you're looking for Yud. Exactly, you're looking for Yud, which is right down here to tell us that that's chapter 10. It's not just an ink blot on the page, it's actually the Yud telling